You probably heard about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But have you ever heard about PTG, post-traumatic growth? This is what researchers are now talking about. And I'm going to tell you about the 5 real areas of growth that people have instead of being traumatized for the rest of their life, how they can actually have growth from this experience here with health and homestead. I was reading the scientific, so that the pottery ends up actually looking really more beautiful after being restored from its brokenness, actually be something that makes you a stronger, even healthier person than maybe even before the trauma that you've been through. I know personal experiences in my life that I've gone through this. I think of my wife and what she has gone through, and I want to talk to you a bit about this as we talk about these 5 points. You may have heard of the book called Ghost Boy. It's the true story of a young boy by the name of Martin Pistorius. He was 12 years old, and he came down with some kind of disease that was so debilitating that he went into a coma, and then he came out of the coma, but he was a vegetable. He was, at the age of 12, there was no response. You could talk to him, he wouldn't respond, no smiling, nothing. And you can imagine how traumatizing that was for him. And he got to the point where, the doctor said, listen, just try to make him as comfortable as possible and just wait for him to die. But he didn't die. And his father was very kind to him. He took care of him, he dressed him, and he brought him to a care center every day. And his mother was so stressed out by the situation that she looked at her son and she said, I wish you were dead. Now, she didn't know that he could understand everything that was going on around him. He just couldn't respond. He had something that the researchers call total locked-in syndrome. Now, while he was in the care facility that they were to take care of him, he was physically abused. He was emotionally abused. He was even sexually abused because the workers thought, well, he can't respond. He can't tell anybody. We can do whatever we want to him. And so he went through this traumatic experience from the age of 12 to, I believe, the age of 25. He was going through this. And he even said, I hated Barney. He was tortured by having to watch that purple dinosaur, that nightmarish television show that no human has ever enjoyed. But he was forced to actually suffer through that. Obviously, that was nothing compared to the other forms of abuse that he suffered. But nevertheless, all through this, at the age of 25, one of the care workers was looking at him, and as they were looking at him, they noticed that he seemed to make some kind of slight movement of his eyes, like almost a smile, almost imperceptible, but there. And as they saw this, they said to the parents, listen, I think he can understand. You need to have him tested. And sure enough, he was tested, and it turned out he was totally there. He had full cognition. And over time, Martin was able to actually go to school, finish schooling, go to college, get a degree in something like computer sciences, and he got a job in the computer industry. He met a woman who ended up, she shared Jesus with him. He wasn't raised in a Christian family. He became a Christian, and she ended up marrying him. What an incredible story. And he shares with us this information in this book, Ghost Boy. And he went through this suffering, and yet this didn't crush him. Sometimes we have family members that go through terrible trauma, or we know someone else does, and we become angry. Why would God allow this to happen? But sometimes the person who goes through it themselves, they actually may grow from this. So what are the 5 points that they talk about? Let's start with number 1. The first experience that the psychologists talk about people experiencing when it comes to post-traumatic growth is a greater appreciation of life. What a great thought. I think of my wife. My wife, her brother was in a car accident. He had been married for 2 days, and a drunk driver crossed over the median and hit head-on he and his wife, and he was killed upon impact. She actually ended up living through the ordeal. She was a nurse, and she knew he was dead. I mean, she was able to check his vitals, and he was dead. He was gone, and she knew that. So for her, you can imagine a post-traumatic experience, and so too for the family. My wife and her, mother, father, brother who was still alive. It was a post-traumatic situation for them, and yet their lives are better today because of that experience. You see, these experiences of life can either crush us or they can make us better. I think about the example of some child who is sexually abused. Now, you basically have two options. Either you can grow from the experience and actually become a better person, and maybe you even help somebody else who's been through the same situation, or some people go on and just perpetuate the same thing on the next generation. We have the opportunity to not be crushed by our difficulties, but actually to be able to grow through them. You know, those who go through these situations, they can end up appreciating life more than ever before, because you begin to take life in some ways more seriously, but in other ways, maybe you just begin to enjoy the life that you have, because you realize every day is a gift. And tomorrow's not promised. Today is really all we have. I mean, you may have tomorrow, and I hope you do. Hope I do too. But the reality is, if we can grow through these situations, we may actually begin to appreciate life even more. The second area of post-traumatic growth is that these individuals often experience an enhancement of close and personal relationships. And when I look at these things, actually, if you happen to be a person who reads the Bible, I have found all 5 of the experiences of post-traumatic growth in the life of Paul. Originally his name was Saul, and Saul's job was actually persecuting Christians, actually having Christians killed. That was his job. He hated Christians. And this man, as we read in the book of Acts in the Bible, it says that he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. And as he met Jesus face to face, now this is the resurrected Jesus, as he meets Jesus, he's asked the question, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Saul recognized, wow, this is the one I've been persecuting. The one that I've hated, Jesus, is actually here speaking with me. And Saul's life was changed, and he went from being a persecutor of Christians to actually the most ardent believer in Jesus Christ, and he exhibited that by his actions. Meaning we could see that Paul went forth and he preached around the then known world. He was sharing the gospel, and this man went from a man who hated these Christians, people who were different from him, to actually loving humanity so much that he wanted to share with everybody about Jesus. And we can see in this passage in Philippians that he cares for these people whom he once hated. He actually hated these people, and he talks about them as my dearly beloved, the ones that I long for. And you see, we can get to the point where maybe we can put down our phones or put down the technology, and actually we can have a greater appreciation of life. And sometimes the trials in life can actually help us to have that experience. The third area of post-traumatic growth is that often people find, or they discover, new possibilities and new purposes in life. And I can think of that with my wife. She was going in a certain direction in her life there, and God took her in a total different direction. And that can happen as you go through a traumatic experience. You may begin to reassess your life. What is really important in life? Is it this, sometimes we feel like, money or a fancy house or a nice car or things will actually bring us happiness. And then we go through a really traumatic experience, some difficulty, serious difficulty, maybe life-threatening or losing someone. And afterward we begin to realize, man, these things really don't actually bring happiness. And my wife completely had that. She had a total change of plan and direction in her life. And I know her life is much better as a result of that. A fourth area that is also spoken of is that, this is what the researchers say. They say that there is potentially an enhanced spirituality afterward. They actually grow in their faith. And I know that's true with my wife. I know through things I've experienced in my life that it's actually helped me to growing through difficulties. I went through 10 years of depression, and it was terrible. And it ended up being a gut issue. I shared a little bit about this in the past, and I'll be sharing more information as we look at the research on the gut-brain connection. But once my gut was healed, my mental state healed. And the research is now showing that often many of the problems you may struggle with psychologically could actually come from the gut. Not everyone, I'm not saying that. But some people actually find that if their gut is healed, that their mind is actually healed. But I'm actually glad that I went through those 10 years of depression. I'm actually happy that I went through it, because if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have really been willing to change my lifestyle, and I wouldn't have cared about as much, I should say, about other people who might have suffered through depression. And so I'm actually thankful that I've gone through this experience. Now, what we might call the fifth example of post-traumatic growth is greater appreciation or utilization of personal strength, or discovering personal strength. And when I think of Philippians chapter 4, Paul's understanding of this, what's amazing is he talks about being beaten. Not just once, multiple times he's beaten, multiple times he's stoned, meaning people are trying to kill him over and over. He's thrown into prison, he's in a shipwreck, he's in the ocean for like a night and a day. I mean, this guy's gone through traumatic things, and you think like, you'd give up. You just be like, this is ridiculous, right? And he would think, you think he maybe be angry with God for all the trials that he's gone through, but he ends up saying after speaking of some of these experiences, he said in Philippians chapter 4 verse 13, he said, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. So maybe a little bit contrary to the psychology, although they may be talking about personal strength, Paul actually discovered that all of the strength that he would have in life would actually come from Jesus. And his life was changed, and because of that, people's lives have been changed down to this very day. One of the things that I think can really enhance our ability to grow and change, I know from my own personal experience, because my life has totally been changed. I totally was not interested in the Bible. For years of my life, I didn't think about God, I didn't pray, but at one point I was challenged actually by an atheist, by someone who did not believe in the Bible. And because of him, I actually read the Bible through for the very first time. And that process of reading it through, actually, it literally just, it revolutionized my life. I mean, it was an incredible transformation. And I love life now more than ever before. I think about what the Bible says in Isaiah chapter 53 about Jesus. It says that he bore our griefs and carried our sorrows. The Bible actually has this strange perspective that Jesus, as he was going through the Garden of Gethsemane and making his way to the cross, and upon the cross, that he actually bore the griefs of humanity. He bore the sorrows of humanity, meaning that he actually took the suffering, not only the guilt, he did take the guilt, absolutely, but he also experienced the suffering that you and I have gone through. What an incredible thought. And when you recognize that he has gone through it, and that he promises that you can do all things through Christ, which strengthens you, that he can give you the victory. He can make you into a new person. And, you know, it's a growth. I won't say that everything changes overnight. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it is an experience of God totally taking it away. But I want to challenge you. If you haven't accepted Jesus as your Savior, to give your life to him. And secondarily, I would challenge you to spend time in the Bible daily. That book is a life-changing book. It has changed my life, and I know it'll do the same for you. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and God bless and have a fantastic day.